And here we are again, 5 a.m. on the 29th of May. I listened to my other videos that I made yesterday, and I thought a bit and compiled a list of things to talk about that I did not mention in the previous videos. And there were some things I wanted to clarify first about the Melchizedek order, Melchizedek priesthood. And one is the first I have written, though I mentioned this before, was that the idea that the Torah actually may not have been given by God to be the law that we are judged by. I do not know. Who knows? I gave a theory that it may have been the first oral tradition put to written form. That it was finalized in Babylon during the captivity, when the rabbis had nothing better to do but I mean, they were priests beforehand, and they became rabbis after this point. During the captivity, because they did not have a temple to work in, to function in. So they would sit around and they would write all of these books, the Bible basically, and work on the text and tinker with it, giving it its final form. As far as I am aware, all the Melchizedeks did, all they had to do in terms of God and his being the priest of Yahweh, is to atone. That's all they had to do, was the atonement sacrifice. But originally there only had to be one goat, as far as I know. Although by the Torah there has to be two. But they were the king, so to speak. They were the head of the family. At the time back then, they were still seen as a family up until the time of Abraham. Until they went into Egypt. They would have had to settle disputes. They would have been the judge. They would have acted as a judge in such a time as it would come up within the family or clan. They would have been the one to settle disputes. The Torah may have just been, or the Levitical system would have been, considered to be the finalized version of that. Perhaps it was the codified form, the book of Leviticus, the codified form of previous judgments and things that Melchizedek had said up until that time. I don't know. Maybe that's what the Book of Moses was, that they originally wrote, the original law. There is a verse later on where it talks about the reform of Josiah in the Book of Kings. Where it says they found the book of the law, and this enabled them to reinvigorate the people's religious fervor. And people say that they found the book of Deuteronomy, because clearly they would have had to have had the law and to be able to do what it said all the way up until this time. If they did not have the Torah, they wouldn't have known what even to do. And the book of the Deuteronomy, or second law, they say is what they found in Josiah, what they found in Josiah's time. But I don't know. I always wondered if they did not produce the law, write it, manufacture it at that time, and then they say, oh look at what we found. We found the law. I don't know. That's always been a thought in the back of my mind. And then they would have tinkered with that in Babylon later. There's a discrepancy. As I said before, that the Melchizedeks, the Adamic lineage, where it would have been the giants, the original white race, and that after the flood, they stopped growing that big and they stopped living as long. And that these original giants then became deified. I'm not entirely certain that's the way it was. Well, I mean the giants were. I didn't mean that the way that it came out. The way it is in the Bible, the way they tell you, is that the giants are the Nephilim, and that the flood was sent to wipe out the Nephilim. But then they were still around later. They were still killing off giants all the way down to David's time. They were killing off giants. When Joshua, they were looking to go into the so-called promised land. They talked about the giants and the big clusters of grapes, and everything was big there. And they went in and fought these Philistines, these giants. Took over the land. But even by the time of David, they still had these giants. They never really cleared them all out. They were still around. Although I don't think they were quite as big by that time. Something happened where it became an inversion, where the giants became vilified as evil. When I'm fairly certain they were the original white race, and that it was the regular sized people, what we would consider regular, that are actually the fallen race. We are the fallen ones, not the other way around. The fallen ones are the ones who are short. Nephil, the word Nephilim, it means to fall. Nephil means to fall. Nephilim are the ones who have fallen. they say they take it to be the fallen angels, but there's no such thing as fallen angels. What there were are fallen people. So I don't know. There's something weird going on, and I began to see that, and I began to see that there was something wrong with the Bible. Something was twisted in it. And I used to believe, up until I was in my 20s, that the Bible was correct. Maybe not 100% accurate in every case, but its errors were only minor, and that in general practice it was accurate, more or less. But the more time went on, the more wrong the Bible became in my mind, until it all just became stories, hokum. Things such as David and Goliath. Anyway, so I don't know what to make of the Torah, what to make of the priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, which is supplanting the Melchizedek priesthood. God never did away with the Melchizedek priesthood. Nowhere in there does it say that it is now void, he no longer accepts it, it's defunct. It never says that at all. It's just out of nowhere, you've got Moses and you've got Aaron, and then somehow there are these Levites, and now they're the priests, and they're in charge of all priestly affairs. Out of nowhere. And more than that, there's the Levitical tribe, the tribe of Levi. Not even the tribe of Judah, which would have been the Melchizedek tribe, if you want to go by the tribes. But as I said before, the tribes just kind of seem to come out of nowhere. I don't think they all came from Jacob. As I said, the tribe of Levi may well have been the cult of Aten, the priest of the cult of Aten from Egypt. So something to think about in terms of the Torah, which is considered the foundational work of both Judaism and Christianity, because it contains both the law and the covenant of Abraham. I consider the covenant of Abraham to be superior, paramount to the law. The law of Moses binds us. Paul even says that. It can only condemn us. The law cannot free us. We will be forever tethered to the law. Christ is what frees us from the law. And I wonder if it's even necessary anymore. If we may not be able to go back to the way it was before the law. I don't know, but there's something wonky there. The line I wrote here is the Melchizedek priesthood being subverted by the Torah. What I meant was the priests in Babylon, the rabbis, elevating themselves and their position magnifying it in the work itself. What I wanted to talk about the whole point of me being the Melchizedek. I skipped over that before. I know what it is. I don't have to have it in any kind of outline to know what it is. It's my purpose for being here. It's the whole purpose of why I'm really alive. More so than writing any text. If I am the Melchizedek, and what he has told me is true, then I'm here for a very specific purpose. And I'll go ahead and get that out of the way here. Christ atoned for the 144,000 spoken of in Revelation. At his death, he atoned for them. These are only the men. I said that before. I said it would be 288,000 if you include women. Because you have to imagine that he would have them all paired up. What I did not mention was that that is what I would atone for when I die. That is the point of my being the Melchizedek, is to atone for them at their time. I have to have a list of 144,000 names by the time I die. All female. All of which to be brought into the kingdom. One woman for every male in the kingdom. To repopulate the planet with. Having more women than men would be one thing, and having more men than women would be another. I hate, and I really hate, that I neglected so much of my time. I just got sick of going over lists and lists of names, endless names. But I got something like 20,000. That's a far cry from being done. I need to be back online so I can do it. And it took me losing that privilege to realize how much I needed it. And I realized why I took it away, because I was just wasting my time. Anyway, I can do this because of very particular things that have uh, a convergence of things that have come together for me to be able to do it. First of all, I have to be in the lineage of one of Christ's brothers, most likely James, or whoever the historical Jesus was. He did not have any children. It has to be through one of his brothers, whoever they may have been. That was how they did things back then. If a brother died, if a man died, his brother took on his responsibilities. That's why James was given the head of the... He was seen as the head of the church after Christ died and then left after he rose back. James took over in Jerusalem and basically was re-Hebrewizing the faith. Until Paul came along. Paul gave us true Christianity. James would not have. Anyway, so I would have to be one of their descendants for it to be legitimate, for it to be possible for me to be a Melchizedek. I'd have to be one of their descendants. Somehow, some way. I have not yet proven in any discernible way that this is the case. I'm not sure it can be done to any degree of certainty. So I have to take it on faith. So we have then the problem of the atonement itself. Sacrifice. If I am the sacrifice, that means I have to be a blameless creature, which of course is made possible by the fact that Christ has already atoned for me. So I would be then both the priest and the acceptable sacrifice. God has to be present. He's present because he dwells within us as believers. The Spirit, so-called Spirit, and the Kapareth, the Ark of the Covenant, has to be present. It's actually the law that has to be present, and the Word of God, as he says, is written on our hearts. So these things are all contained within me as a believer, a truly rectified person under Christ, or in Christ, in his blood. It is all predicated by that fact, Christ's blood. So I have to have been atoned by him, and I have to be a descendant of one of his brothers. And after that, it's just him saying that I can and must do it, and it's on me to do it. And so that's where we are. That's what it is. And so whatever time it is that he has set appointed for it to happen, I will die, and at that time it will be counted as a sacrifice for the people I have on my list, which he also says he had made a list of our names. It said he had our names engraved on his hand, and he also says he had us written in the book of life that every believer knows about. So I have to write my own book with all of their names in it, and it damn well needs to be done by the time I punch my ticket. Anyway, yeah, that's what that's about. The nature of sin. Everybody gets sin wrong. Nobody gets it right. Everybody thinks sin is what you do, and you have to be punished for what you do. That's a very human way of looking at it. Like going to jail. Well, you go to jail to serve your time because you got to be punished for your crime. And people literally think God is the same way. Oh, he's a judge. He's going to put you in he's going to send you to hell because you broke the law, which is to say the Torah. Now, even Paul, I forget where, but he says that he literally says that sin is breaking the law. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. There was no law of Moses before there was a law of Moses. I hate this concept of sin being something that you do. People just make it, they break it to be this way. Sin being something you do, it's your fault. So you have to pay for it. So then you have to do something to make it right because of what you did. This is all about you. All about us. People break it to make it fit them. It's very Catholic, it's very Muslim, it's very Hindu, it's very not Christian. The sin that is accounted to us is beyond our control. It's nothing to do at all with what we do, and neither is anything we can do about it going to change it. We cannot do anything about it, our sin nature, and we cannot get rid of it, we cannot control it, we cannot stop it. Neither can we save ourselves. Only Christ can redeem us. Christ saves us. He does that by removing the sin nature from us. That will not be completed until we get our new bodies, but the process begins in this life, and this is counted towards our fire. Everything goes in the fire. Now the fire is either hell or it is this life. That is the trade-off. You either go through the fire now or you go through it later. And now is much preferred. It's the easy way. They got two ways, the easy way and the hard way. And you do not want the hard way. I have theorized about how the sin nature got into us and the fall of man. Somehow it has to do with our genetics. The fall of man is our genetic tampering. It's our becoming lesser human, separated from God via our genetics. Something has made us more animalistic and less human. We do have the rhesus, the RH factor in our blood, the monkey blood, contaminating our true essence. However, the RH negative people are no better. They too have the sin nature. But it is something in our genetics beyond our current understanding that causes us to be what we are. Which is to say evil, degenerate, and animal-like. The line that Paul says about not being able to do what he should do and continually doing what he doesn't want to do, not being able to stop himself. That is the nature of the human struggle. The things that we know we should do, we cannot do, and the things that we want to do, we can't make ourselves do it. We can't stop ourselves from doing things we know we shouldn't. I, for the life of me, cannot drink water to the amount that I should. I hate it. I can't stand it. I used to drink tons of water and drown myself in it. And I felt very good. I felt it was the best I ever have felt when I used to fast. I used to drink a lot of water. And that's how it should be. But for years now I cannot make myself drink water. It's, for some reason, I have a mental block against it. And my body suffers for it. But it is something I know that I should do. Yeah, I cannot do it. Something so simple. I can see the negative health effects adding up over the years. It's not been that many years either. Perhaps he is causing me to do it just to show me the negative effects, the detrimental effects of it. To have me go through this. Hopefully I'll be able to start drinking water again and fast again the way I know I should. I used to only eat 3 days a week. Anyway, so the sin nature. So there's something about it. I remember I have spoken of the sin nature being some kind of universal contaminant infecting the planet. And I have spoke of Christ's atonement being more like an injection of a vaccine, an immunization against this contamination. Which saves us from it killing us. I have spoken of the sin nature as radiation. And only Christ can get rid of the radiation. It's something in us that we cannot get rid of. If you are irradiated, radioactive particles in your body, you cannot do anything to get rid of it. It's just in your body, and you're going to have to deal with it. And that is very much like the sin nature. Or it's like something in your blood, venom in your blood, poison in your blood. You can't get it out. It's in you. No amount of action is going to change it. No amount of good deed is going to change it. It's part of you. But the sin nature is part of us. We cannot get it out. That is what has to be rectified before we can enter the kingdom. Our sin nature has to be removed. Somehow. Christ has to remove that. Completely. And it's basically equivalent. If you want my true opinion, the closest thing I can think of in the world, in reality, to the sin nature in man is the law of entropy. The continual breaking down of all things. That is sin. And that is what the law is meant to safeguard us against by defining order. It is the process of maintaining order, stasis. That is the law. We are charged with keeping order and not letting the world slide into entropy as best we can, to rather manage the entropy. We are not doing that. We are letting evil just do whatever it wants with this planet. We're not maintaining it. We are not being the custodians of the earth that we are intended to be. And the white race is not being the white blood cells, as I spoke of before, of the body of humanity. And we have lost our way, because nobody remembers this, and nobody thinks about these things. Another thing sin is perhaps the most misunderstood thing in the Bible. It is not the breaking of the law. It is not doing bad things. Sin, I have said it so many times, sin is not what you do. Sin is what you are. We are the sin that he has to atone for. It's not what we do. That you cannot atone for an action. You atone for a person. These are truths people just can't seem to understand. Another topic, perhaps the second most misunderstood thing in the Bible, is that of hell. Nobody seems to get hell right either. A few do, but not many. Few care to look. There are two things referred to as hell in the Bible. Technically three, but I've already spoken of one of them. Tartarus is another dimension where the demons are. The Naga race, which are the cause of us being in this situation. The first is Gehenna, spoken of by Christ in the Gospel, translated very, very erroneously as hell. It's literally a trash fire in the Valley of Hinnom, outside of Jerusalem. I really, really wish they had just not translated that at all. Transliterated it instead as Hinnom, Valley of Hinnom, which is what it is. It's a literal place in Israel. You can go and see it for yourself. You can take pictures of it. It is a valley that was at the time owned by a man named Hinnom. It was used as an analogy by Christ for the punishment that will happen, which everyone thinks of as eternal hell. It is not eternal, it is aeonian. There is no eternity in the Bible. There simply is not. There is the Greek eon, and there is the Hebrew olam. Both are indeterminate spans of time. It could be a week, it could be 10,000 years. It's an unknown span of time. Same as Yom, or the day, is sometimes used that way, as it is in Genesis with the days of creation. So Christ used it as an analogy for the fires of hell, it's only used in the Gospels. It's not used anywhere else because the Valley of Hinnom is only known to people that are in that area. The rest of the New Testament is written to the wider Greek world, and they will have no idea what some local valley is, so there's no point in even bringing it up. And anywhere else it is used in the New Testament, it is Hades, which is what the real word hell means. Hell originally meant to hide, to be hidden. And it comes from the Nordic word hell, the underworld. And that itself goes back to Hades, which is the world of the unseen for the Greeks. So hell would be a proper translation of Hades, because it means to hide, or something, a place that is hidden. Hades literally means the place of the unseen. It is the negation of the word ido, which means to see, and you put the a in front of it and it negates the word and makes it unseen. So that's what it is, a place of the unseen. And it's not even a place, it's not a physical place that you go to. It is, in fact, it is a coma state, is what it is. After you die, you are in what is in effect a comatose state, a spiritual coma, until the time of judgment, in which you are judged to either be sent to Gehenna or the kingdom. This is at the end. And that could be 1 year, or it could be 10,000 years for the duration of this coma, this Hades. Hades is not hell. It is not the underworld. The Greeks had a concept of the underworld, which they called Hades, which is why they're using that word here in the Bible as such. But to say that that's what they mean is to say that the Greek myths were right. Same with Tartarus. That's another Greek underworld myth. So we can't sit there and use the direct meaning of Hades as you would in Greek mythology. Neither can you just translate it hell and call it a day. What they are doing is using Greek words to describe Christian concepts. They're redefining these words. They took on a meaning at the time to Christians then that they have since lost due to Christian dogma. In the game Underworld, Tomb Raider Underworld, Lara Croft is looking for Avalon to find her mother. There is a scene in which she discovers that the Midgard serpent which was said to be a giant snake that encircled the earth at the bottom of the sea. There's a scene where she discovers the Midgard serpent is actually the tectonic plates, where the seam in between the plates, you have the fault lines. So the Midgard serpent is actually the fault lines wrapping around the earth. That is using an ancient concept to describe a modern concept. You're redefining what Midgard serpent was and applying it to something else. That is what they're doing here with Hades. They're taking something that is known to everybody and then redefining it as something new and saying this is what it really is. Otherwise it'll be Dante's Inferno, where you're crossing the river Styx and you're seeing Charon and Persephone chained on the side. Hades is oblivion. The word I use for it is oblivion. That is the Timaean word I have chosen for this concept. I cannot call it Hades because Hades is already used by the Greek myths. Can't call it hell because hell has been bastardized by the Christian faith, the Christian dogma, what that is, to where the concept of hell is equivalent to Gehenna, but the original meaning of the word hell was essentially Hades. It was already fit one of them, but it has been switched over to the other, the one that was not, and the one that it was not shouldn't be hell at all. But people think of hell as being the place of fire, so when you say that, it sounds strange to them because they think, well, Gehenna is a place of fire, so that's what hell is. That's what you should translate as hell because that's what it is. We only think that's what it is because it was translated as hell improperly. People just can't see this. So Hades is oblivion. A place in which we are oblivious and we have no knowledge, no observation, no perception of anything. We are out. And then when we wake up after 1,000 years or 5,000 years, it's instantaneous, like waking up after you sleep. You're out and then you wake up, you have no perception of how long it has been. You have to look at the clock to see how long it's been. That'll be the same when as soon as you die, you're at judgment. It's instantaneous, but it could be 1,000 years. You were just out of it for that duration. That is Hades. That is oblivion. Nobody is sent to Hades because it's not a place to go. You can't go to Hades. It's not. It does not exist. It's not a place. The equivalent of Hades in the Old Testament is Sheol, which they use to describe the grave or the tomb. There is the lake of fire, which is the one and only time in Revelation where the thing that we think of as hell actually is mentioned. I want to say it only happens once. The lake of fire is mentioned in Revelation. I don't think it's mentioned anywhere else. It's only made an analogy of Gehenna, Valley of Hinnom. But that's not the actual lake of fire. He's not actually referring to it. He's just describing it by using a physical fire that was perennial. Anyway, hell will last. This lake of fire will last 2160 years at minimum. And if not, it will be multiples of that. So that is not advisable. That is not the path. That is not the desirable path to take. The Hyksos. These are the people of unknown origin that came into Egypt 1600 BC or so. They took over northern Egypt. There is a theory, some hold it to be true, that these people that took over northern Egypt, which is the land occupied by the Jews, the Hebrews in Egypt, is the original version, the historical version of the Hebrews in Egypt. That is the origin of that story of them being in Egypt in the first place. They were not slaves of the Egyptians. They took over northern Egypt. It was their country. The northern half was theirs. It wasn't even Egypt anymore. It was the land of the Hyksos for a couple hundred years there. So I don't know if this is them or not. Some claim that it is, others claim that it, obviously they say that it's not, that it doesn't fit the historical, that doesn't fit the timeline of the Jews when they were there, that kind of thing. There's there's arguments pro and con, for and against, but I think it's worthy of note. It's worth keeping in the back of your mind. I have the Nagas written here, but I feel like I've already talked about what that says. The Nagas made the various non-white races to be slaves for them. The white Adamic race is the only one that has been free. I've already spoken of that, though. We as racists have to make peace with the Jews. There again, I feel like I've already said that, but maybe I didn't go in. Maybe I didn't go into as much detail as I thought I should. The Jews are white people. There's no reason for white people and Jews to not get along other than some silly crap between them. It's so stupid that it goes back to Christians blaming the Jews for Christ's birth. Anybody that blames the Jews for not Christ's birth, Christ's death, anybody that blames the Jews for killing Jesus doesn't understand a damn thing about Christianity. And I can't believe that there were Christians that would blame Jews. It doesn't matter who did it. That's irrelevant. The point is, he came here to die. Somebody had to kill him. That's the whole point. I mean, the Romans did it, but the Jews, the rabbis, turned him over. Because he was always at odds with them. The religious authority at the time, which is, that was basically the Jewish government, was the religious people. And so this supposedly started a back and forth between Christians, Europeans, and Jews. And this is unfortunate. It reached a head in the 20th century, and now apparently they are getting retribution for this, and this is sad. I said in the previous video that it's maybe possible that the Nazis were set up from the start to be the fall guys, to blame white people on. As if all white people are that way. I don't know, but it is very convenient that they chose communism immediately after Nazism fell. They were basically rising simultaneously. So anyway, we have to make peace with the Jews somehow, some way. Even though racism is still the only way to save the white race. Like I said before, racial solidarity. But the Jews are part of the white race. We should include them with our solidarity, racial solidarity. And they should include us in their racial solidarity. The white people, and then everybody else. White people, including the Jews, the Ashkenazi, and then everybody else. We are the Adamic race. We are the chosen of God. We're the ones running the planet over everybody else. That is how it is supposed to be. Right now it's reverse of how it's supposed to be, with the contingent of the white race trying to wipe out the rest of the white race because of some perceived animosity between the two. This is destroying us. We have to stop it. When I say us, I meant all white people. It's destroying all of us. The Muslim Jihad to bring back their Mahdi. Yes, I was watching something. I forget what the hell it was. It reminded me of the nature of the Muslims and how they're trying to take over the world. They have a belief that they have to conquer the planet before their Mahdi can return. It's the opposite of the Christian belief that when Christ returns, they'll take over the planet. Well, they believe they have to take it over before their Messiah can come. And so that is why we cannot allow them to spread around the globe, because they will use that for their jihad. Their religion is jihad. We cannot allow them to have that. The length of the Sabbath day is 16 hours. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. I have made several references to how stupid the rabbis got in their writings about all the things you can and cannot do on the Sabbath day. And I said they get it from one verse in the Bible. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. One of the commandments. And so they get that. You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. You're supposed to use that time and devote it to God. And so they take that you cannot work, and they turn it into this whole rigmarole about things you cannot do, or how much of something you can do before it is considered work. It is literally retarded. It is ridiculous. For example, like I said, you can't start a fire to cook your dinner, so you have to cook it the night before. I'm remembering something, or what I'm trying to remember something. It's divided by 10, that's right. 16.8 hours. The tithe, as it is called, is where you give God or the temple or the church a tenth of your money. If you take the hours of the day, 24 hours, multiply it for 7 days, you get 168 hours in the week. Then you divide that by 10 and you get 16.8 hours. Which are the waking hours in one day. If you sleep 7.2 hours and you're awake 16.8 hours. It's a little bit more. If you sleep 8 hours, obviously you have 16 hours awake. So it's a bit more than 16 hours. It's an extra 45 minutes. That is how much time out of the week we owe God. If you use the 10% tithe as a measure. And that's the waking hours of one day, which would be the Sabbath. That's what it is for. And not to read, not to go by what any rabbi tells you can and cannot do. Or how far you can walk on a flippin' Sabbath. That is ridiculous. It's between you and God, and it's your time together. That's what it's for. I thought after I spoke of it before, after I talked about it, I thought, after I shut the video off, I thought about, there is a text that they have, a papyrus, that talks about Khufu working on the pyramid. And they use that as part of their proof. I forget the name of this thing, what it's called. But basically, my answer to that is that Khufu was repairing the pyramid, or adding other buildings around it, burying the stupid barge, the boat. They buried a boat next to it in the ground. All this kind of stuff. Perhaps, maybe they put the casing stones on it at that time. Maybe it did not have the casing stones before then. I don't know. Putting the casing stones on maybe took 20 years. I don't know. I would say that's more accurate. The pyramid probably took 200 years. It was not built as a tomb. The coffer in the king's chamber, which sadly has a chunk out of the corner from some idiot trying to drill into it, knocked off the damn corner trying to get treasure out of the box, only to find it's fucking empty because he's a moron and he should have known better. I really hate this kind of crap. All these ancient sites, priceless, defaced by retards trying to get treasure or whatever. That goofy guy bombing in, just literally using dynamite to like blast his way into the side of the pyramid. I mean, why the hell are people so stupid? This is the pyramid of Egypt, Giza, the Great Pyramid. And this guy's just blasting his way into the... It just angers me. These kind of people. I remember I heard a guy told a story one time working in Roslyn Chapel. Roslyn Chapel is a well-known place in conspiracy lore in concerning the Grail myth. People chasing after the Grail. And this guy that worked there told a story about one time a guy came in and they had these columns there that are well known pillars in this church, and he said he came in with tools and he was going to tear down one of these columns, and like with a sledgehammer, you know. He said, he's like, why? What are you doing? And he was like, I'm looking for the Grail. I'm going to find it. It's going to be in this column. So we had to stop him from basically taking a sledgehammer to this pillar, this column. They're famous in terms of at least this particular church anyway. The two columns, the master and the apprentice column. And this guy thought that the Grail, the actual literal cup, was inside the cement inside the stonework of this pillar. So he was going to destroy it, just on his hunch, his belief that this cup was inside. Another story, there was a stone circle in Britain, standing stones, that were on this guy's farm. And this is like 100 years ago. And these people would come to his farm to see it, the site. And he got so fed up with people coming to see the stones that he went out and tore them down. Just like I just said about the other guy. Got a sledgehammer, went out and just bashed the rocks down. They weren't thick like Stonehenge. Stonehenge is too big to take a hammer to. But if they're thin enough, which these were, you could just take a hammer and smash through them. And he tore them down. They've only been there for, 2,000 years or whatever, just standing there. And because he owned the property and didn't like people coming to see it, he went and smashed them down. Archaeology be damned. This is the kind of crap I hate. The defacing or the destruction of archaeological sites, especially these monumental sites. Oh wait, I got sidetracked. Yeah, the coffer in the king's chamber, which has the corner chiseled out of it, actually had the same volume as that of the ark. I have often wondered if the ark itself wouldn't have just fit inside of this coffer. I wonder that. I really do. You'd have to take the staves out of it to carry the poles they had carrying it with, because they have the rods stuck in it to maneuver it with. But I do wonder if you could just put the ark inside the coffer and that was what the treasure was. If you want to call it treasure. That was the original seat of God, was in the king's chamber over the coffer. That's a theory. That's a pretty strong theory. I do think there's a connection there between the ark and the pyramid. Then I say the ark had 4 cherubs on it. The ark, he showed it to me in the wheels, that it was on the wheels, really what we would call coasters. And is it coasters, or what do you call those? I forget what you call them. The little, there's a type of wheel that you have that spin around. The Ark of the Covenant had wheels on it that would turn on their own axis, so that you could actually take the ark and you could spin it around on its own axis, because the wheels would turn. And there's actually a verse in Ezekiel where he's talking about the cherubs not turning. Their heads don't turn when they move, they just go in that direction. When you have these type of wheels on a piece of furniture, you can push it in any direction and it will go in that direction. You do not have to turn it like a car. You have to turn the wheel to turn the car. But if it has these omnidirectional wheels, it would just go in whatever direction. It would not have to turn. And so the ark had these rotating wheels on it, and you could spin it in any direction, and you could push it in any direction without turning it. So it's very maneuverable. And he showed me that. And then I was looking one day through the pictures, because I have a digital version of the McClintock and Strong encyclopedia, and it had all of the pictures in one section, in these large folders where they just had all the pictures of the whole thing in these folders. And I was going through them, and I came across the section that had the pictures of the ark, and they had several different depictions of the Ark of the Covenant, different artist renderings, and one of them struck me very strongly. And it had the ark on 4 wheels, and the wheels were at the bottom of the legs of the cherubs. The angels were in the corners. Okay, their bodies were along the corners of the ark. Their legs were going down as the legs of the furniture together, and then they terminated in the wheels. All right, and then above that, where they had their arms all outstretched, touching each other, there were 4, because there was one in each corner. And as their wings were outstretched towards the other, they would all touch halfway. And that was very reminiscent of what Ezekiel described seeing when he talked about the throne of God. And I thought that was very interesting, because the cherubs do travel in 4s. That is why it described it as being 4 cherubs carrying God, is because that's what the ark looked like. Although I don't think he was describing the ark in that moment, but he was using the imagery of the ark as the representation of the throne of God. And he's saying there are 4 cherubs there, so there may have been 4 cherubs on the ark. Although I did say before that the dollar bill was the representation of the Cappareth, and on there it only had 2 places for cherubs to be on either side. So anyway, it could be anything. I said before that Enlil was the head of the white people, and that Enki was the head of the black people, and then the Arabs. Enlil had, Sitchin talked about this, though I forget which book it was in that he mentioned it, probably Wars of Gods and Men, where he talked about Enlil and his son Ninurta. When they were fighting over Egypt in what he termed the Pyramid Wars, but it was for the territory of Egypt and the Sinai, he talked about Enlil and their forces having these flying machines, which he called birds, which would be birds of war, or eagles of war, And I took that, and I remembered that. And you can trace the eagle down through history, throughout all the white countries. All the way from Egypt with its phoenix, the Phoenicians, named after the phoenix, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Russians, the Germans, and the Americans. North America, U.S. These are all countries of Enlil. These are white countries, Europe and America. The other ones are all in key. Africa's in key, South America's in key, Central America, Middle East. I hate to think what it means that they are doing this to the white race now. Of course, these are the reptilian gods here that I'm talking about. The idea being that if this is happening to the white race, that the other races are taking over, then that implies that it is the family of Enki gods that has taken power and are basically taking over. And that's not a good sign. The Book of Enoch, I guess I should talk about this. I do not esteem the Book of Enoch very highly at all. It's very similar to the Book of Daniel. Although Daniel, I would say, is actually a bit better. Book of Enoch is pretty much crap as far as I'm concerned. But people have begun holding it in such high regard, just to a ridiculous degree. Just because it talks about the Watchers. The only reason people care about it is because it's not in the Bible. If it was in the Bible, nobody would give a shit about it. Nobody reads the Bible. Nobody cares. They don't want to read the Bible. The reason they like Enoch is because they think, oh, it was taken out of the Bible. It was kept away from us. It's got to be true because it's the one they don't want us to find. This is the logic these people have. The only part of the Book of Enoch I care about is the calendar part. It's the fourth part out of the 5 different parts of the book. They claim it was written by Enoch. It was not written by Enoch. Enoch is far too long ago to be written in any kind of Hebrew. Actually, they don't use the Hebrew. They use the Ethiopic. There are 3 different books of Enoch. But the one everyone talks about is the Ethiopic Enoch. And it's no good. It's just no good. The only part worth a damn is the calendar. And it's promoting a solar calendar over a lunar calendar. 364 days. Over the 354-day calendar. The majority text is superior to the critical text. The majority text is the one that was used by the Byzantines. The critical text is the one that they are claiming to be superior, even though all it is a chopped up version of other Bibles with they're taking a razor blade to it and duct taping it back together, all out of order. That's how I look at it. I do not approve of the critical text. Jim has a series on textual criticism in which he promotes the Textus Receptus, although I don't think I fully agree with the Textus Receptus being the main one, being the best one. He does prove that the critical text is bullshit, mainly the Westcott and Hort text. And he uses, I remember, volume 10 of the Church Fathers, early Church Fathers. Because you have the Ante-Nicene, there's 9 volumes. Then there's a 10th volume, which is an index. And he found in there where these early fathers from before 325, before Constantine, which is to say they predate the critical text most ancient sources. I hate it when I see that in the Bible, these goofy Bibles. You know, this Bible uses the most ancient sources, by which they mean it's a critical text Bible. He used that 10th volume to show where basically it was showing where all of the quotes that the authors used of the Bible, and he just simply looked up the verses that the critical text people claim that it was not there, that were added in. And so I looked up to find where these Ante-Nicene fathers are quoting the verses that are not in the critical text, thus proving that it did exist in the first place and was taken out, not added in. I can just tell by watching the critical text proponents that they are not fighting for God. They're fighting against God. You can tell it just by their demeanor or how they act. You can tell they do not care. They're not Christian. They are literally fighting for the other side. They're fighting against the Bible. And there's actually that book that Jim promotes a lot, or well, at least in that series on textual criticism, an old book called Unholy Hands on the Bible, which was mostly written about the Westcott and Hort text being compiled. Anyway, I'll go with the majority text. The majority, being the majority, doesn't mean that it's the most accurate. That's the argument of the critical text people. It means that it's the most accepted, and maybe it was the most accepted because it was seen to be the most accurate. Unlike the critical text, which they have to pull out of trash cans and dig out of the dust to find, because nobody cared, nobody used it, and it was left to evaporate in the wind until these guys came along to find it and then inject it back into the Bible after 1500 years. Very much the same kind of thinking as plucking Nigerians out of Africa and injecting them into Germany where they don't belong just to fuck everything up. It's like injecting somebody with cancer into their body just to see what happens. That's what these people think. They just like splicing everything up just to see what it does. And they have some kind of bullshit reason to explain it, but really they just like fucking everything up. Especially when it concerns God. Yahweh is the Roman Jove for Jupiter. That's written in a bit of a strange way. Obviously Yahweh is not Jupiter, but in a way he is. Clearly I see Yahweh as being the God of the universe, but I've always noticed, or at least for a long time I've noticed, a very similar, this goes back to the name argument, the name of God. Yahweh is taken from the phrase I am, which was taken as literal dictation by the Jews when he said, when Moses asked him what his name was, he said, I am what I am. This phrase, I am what I am, has been reduced to the word Yahweh in Hebrew, and that is then the name of God to them. But given that Hebrew does not have vowels, it is reduced to 4 letters, and we are left to guess what the original vowels were. Latin doesn't have that problem. And in the word Jove, J-O-V-E, you have vowels written. And in Latin that would be pronounced Yahweh. And so I think that's pretty dang close. So I see in this a little tinge of proof that the Romans were a distant relative of the Hebrews, just as Paul claimed when he said they were of the same ilk. And then last but not least in my list here, I have written no speaking in tongues. Speaking in tongues is the most shameful show of crap that preachers do on TV. Doesn't help anybody, doesn't do anybody any good. The reason it's wrong is because the true tongues is not speaking gobbledygook that nobody can understand. What tongues is speaking your language and everyone else hears in the language that they do understand, so that everybody understands it. As the exact opposite of what tongues is nowadays when preachers do it. Nobody understands them because they're speaking gibberish. Back then when they did it, they spoke their own language and everybody heard exactly what they were saying in their own language. People had to travel from all around, going back to Jerusalem every year. If you're talking about the Jews, they had to travel back into Jerusalem every year. And this created a bit of a cacophony of languages. And so you had this handy little tool of speaking in tongues, which is to say every language at once. Not no language, every language. So there is that. Interesting movie here. I thought I would pick it considering I had the Ark on the list here to talk about for a bit. That's all I have written down. I'm sure I will think of other things later to talk about. It showed the German Eagle of War there on the crate with the Ark in it. Like I said before, I just mentioned that was that goes back to Sumer actually, that the eagle as a symbol of the white race is apparently very ancient. But as I said before, I think we acquired the Ark in World War I. But that may be why this movie was made. I could cut it off, or I could let it run and just watch the movie. Well, I'm out of things to say, and I'm actually getting kind of tired now that it is 6:40 in the morning. So I guess I will go ahead and cut it off here. I will talk to you later. Until then, take it easy.